Indiana Hoosiers, your #1 seed in the college football playoff, and that man, Fernando Mendoza, going to be named a Heisman finalist on this day and is the pretty overwhelming Heisman favorite. But even though Indiana's the 1 seed and they beat Ohio State on a neutral field, they are not favored to win the Natty. Ohio State plus 220, followed by Indiana at plus 290. Then it's Georgia at plus 550. And only 2 other teams are shorter than 17-1 to win this thing, Oregon and Texas Tech. Let's get Tom Fornelli in here for his college football playoff tiers. Danny Kanell is here to react as well. We're going to start at Tier 4 and work our way to Tier 1. Tier 4, it's not our fault the ACC stinks. The ACC, Tom, the reason why we have 2 G5 teams.
I did not realize Danny was going to be on the segment, but man, am I happy that he is, because he's one of the people that are yelling that James Madison and Tulane shouldn't even be in the college football playoff, when the reality is the reason James Madison is in the college football playoff is because the ACC stinks. If Florida State and Clemson were as good as they are supposed to be in any given season, we wouldn't have had the situation where a 7-5 Duke wins the ACC and is ranked below the Sun Belt champion James Madison Duke. So Tulane, James Madison are one of the 5 teams that actually met the required criteria to get into the college football playoff. The only thing we know going in any year is if you win your conference and you're one of the 5 highest ranked 5 conference champions, you're in. Tulane did it, James Madison didn't, Duke didn't. So therefore they shouldn't be punished for it, but everybody's mad at them. It's the ACC's fault.
No, they shouldn't be punished for it, and congrats for making the tournament, but they have no business being in this every single year. Like last year, Boise State, I had 0 problem with a Group of 5 champion, Mountain West champion, who went toe-to-toe with Oregon, only lost by a field goal, had a generational running back in Ashton Genty, feel like they passed the eye test. 0 problem with them getting in. And my thing isn't necessarily, I'm not upset at 2 getting in. I'm upset at 1 guaranteed every single year. I think you should have to meet some sort of criteria, whether it's scheduling multiple Power 4 teams, whether it's reaching a certain ranking threshold that you should have to be in, that you have to earn it to get in. And by the way, that stands for the ACC too. I'm not sitting here saying Duke got robbed. No, I would say the ACC champ doesn't belong in this year either. So I think it has to be reworked as far as all of these automatic qualifiers. What do we do just gifting teams in just for winning their conference? I think they should have to meet some other criteria as well.
Daniel, they did meet the criteria. They won their conference and they were ranked higher than Duke. That's the only criteria. That's the one that exists.
We need to evaluate that criteria from here on out.
Danny's saying no participation trophies, which is your 3rd tier.
Thank you.
Your 3rd tier is participation trophies, and it's a bunch of SEC teams, including a couple who are hosting CFP games in the first round.
Yeah, I mean, we're just putting these teams in like Tulane and James Madison who have no chance to win. But we'll also put in Ole Miss, Texas A&M, Oklahoma, Alabama, and Miami. Teams that have lost multiple games, or Texas A&M, who happen to play the bottom half of the SEC this year. And the one top half team they played to in conference play, they lost to. Ole Miss, their coach loved that team so much he left for another job. So these are 5 teams that are in the playoff because they met the criteria of the selection committee in that they had the right metrics and they deserve to be in because of it. But if we're being honest about it, and you can look at the odds board that we posted at the very beginning of the segment, they don't really have an excellent chance of winning. In fact, these 5 teams combined, if you go off of the implied odds, combined for about a 10% chance to win the national title. So I'm happy they're in it, just like Tulane and James Madison.
It's interesting. There are 2 teams on that list, though, that at one time, and as recently as 2 weeks ago, for Texas A&M, you would have said, oh, maybe they're the best team in the country. After the first 5 weeks of the season, a lot of people were saying that about Miami. I still think those 2 teams are built more. And I actually am more of a believer in Miami because of the lines of scrimmage. That offensive line, I think, is still one of the better offensive lines in the country. The defensive line with Ruben Bain and Akeem Mesidor and Corey Heatherton done a really good job with that defense. I think they could win it. The great unknown why I'm not really pushing back that much is Carson Beck is a liability, right? If you get the best version of him for 3 or 4 games, then yeah, they could possibly win it. But can I say that and feel like I can trust that? No, he's been way too up and down. But I would say Miami might be a team that I would lean towards a higher tier.
Of that group, the biggest long shot is Oklahoma at 50-1. Shortest odds, Texas A&M at 17-1. To tier 2, where we start getting into, I don't know, maybe they could make a run here, including one team that has a bye and another might end up playing them in the quarterfinals.
Yeah, these are my maybe if everything works out for them, because this is an Oregon team that has been very banged up in recent weeks. We've seen them playing in a lot of these big games and winning despite missing star players at receiver, despite missing their starting right tackle at times. So you look at the squad overall and what they've done this season, and, their only loss was a 10-point home loss to the Indiana team that did beat Ohio State and win the Big Ten to earn the #1 seed. And you wonder, at full health, if this team is firing on all cylinders, are they capable of winning the national title? I know Danny certainly thinks they are. And then when you come to Texas Tech, listen, Texas Tech's in the wrong era right now. Now, they fit this era because NIL and being able to spend money on their players is what has vaunted them into this position. But they play like one of those early BCS SEC teams where the defense is absolutely phenomenal and will smother every single opponent that they face. But then their offense, you're just kind of wondering if they could score 17 points because that's all they need to win. So I look at Texas Tech and I think defensively they can compete with anybody in this field. It's just, can their offense do enough in 3 straight games to win a national title?
That's why I say no. I don't know if I would have Texas Tech in this maybe one. I don't trust Baron Morton. They also don't have any depth with Will Hammond out for the year with an ACL. So if anything does happen to Baron Morton, and he got knocked around a couple times against BYU, and I was like, uh-oh, what are they going to do if Mitch Griffiths has to come in? Hopefully that doesn't happen. But even if Baron Morton's healthy, he's a little bit too erratic for me. We've seen a little bit too much of a roller coaster ride for him at the quarterback position. And the defense, as good as they have been statistically, we saw the 70th ranked strength of schedule there on the graphic that we showed. I'm not so sure they're as dominant as we think. And Bud Elliott, our buddy on Cover 3, always goes, let's see, who has the best quarterback they have faced and the best offense they have faced? Well, they did face Sam Leavitt at Arizona State. And granted, that was without their own quarterback. But Sam Leavitt threw for 300 yards, and they lost that game against the best quarterback that they've played. So I'll be very curious to see how Texas Tech does in the matchup against Oregon in the Orange Bowl, which is what we should see. I wonder if Oregon gets the better of them in that game and moves on because Texas Tech's offensive liabilities.
All right, only one tier left, Tom, and only 3 teams left, and you've titled this "The Champion Probably Lives Here." How do you separate Indiana, Ohio State, and Georgia?
Yeah, I do think these are the 3 best teams we have in the field. And if you look again at those odds, there's over a 70% chance, according to them, that one of these 3 will be your national champion. Personally, I still like Ohio State the best of the 3. I think they are the most complete team, and they lost a 13-10 game to an Indiana squad that proved they belong on the field with anybody else in the country. But I just think that at the end of the day, when it comes to talent, there isn't anybody else in this country that can stack up to what Ohio State has on both sides of the ball. And I think that when you get to this time of year, when you're facing elite team after elite team, that's typically what wins out in the end. We saw it last year with Ohio State when they came in without a bye and steamrolled through the field anyway. I think we see something similar this year, although I don't think it'll be blowouts. I do think they're going to be far more tested, but I do like their odds of winning over these other 2.
I like those 3 teams. The only thing I would say, and you made the comp in how Ohio State last year, bounced back. The Oregon Ducks, I might add to this tier. They remind me more of Ohio State last season when, Ohio State last year they had the 2 losses in the regular season. Oregon only has 1, but they did lose to Indiana. Last year we saw Ohio State lose to Oregon, then get the revenge in the postseason. I think the Oregon Ducks, the most important factor for them is getting healthy. They were so banged up in their bye week before they played Iowa. All of a sudden, you're seeing multiple starters out for that game. He had a laundry list of guys out, and that was the thing that jumped out to me when we talked to him yesterday on the HQ show. I said, what'd you do during this week? He said, we rested and got healthy. That jumped out to me. DeCorian Moore, Evan Stewart potentially coming back as well. If they get some of their offensive weapons back to add to Kenyon Sadiq, I think they were playing some of their best football down down the stretch. Dante Moore, I think he learned a lot from that first matchup against Indiana. I wouldn't be surprised if Oregon could be the last team standing. So I would make the case for them to be in that group with the top tier.
Okay, Danny Kanell says 4 in the top tier. Tom Fornelli just 3, and the champion probably lives right there. Cover 3 podcast dropped a few hours ago. Notre Dame opting out of a bowl game, and also more reaction on the college football playoff bracket.